Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. Today we're attempting to answer the question, just where the hell are the devs trying to get this game to go? Now, what we're going to do today is look back at some of the bigger changes that have come out in the past year or so, and also take a look back at some of the announced upcoming changes and features, and potentially the reasons behind them. Some reasons Wargaming has come out and told us, some they haven't been so clear on. So let's go ahead and dive right on in. So we're going to start by looking at big changes from the past year or so. Now do keep in mind, if I went through every single patch note and every single change for the past 2 or so years, we'd be here for like 5 hours. So we're just looking at the bigger changes throughout the last bit of time with the game. So of course one of the biggest changes, not only in the past couple of years, but in the game's history in general, was the Commander Rework. The Commander Rework brought about some needed changes to a few Commander skills, such as Adrenaline Rush becoming a 3-point skill, which makes sense considering how big of an advantage the skill gives you. But it also completely flipped around the Commander system, which now has every Commander have a skill tree for each class, which on paper sounds pretty good. More specialized skills for each individual class can be created and added to that class's skill tree. The max number of skill points was also increased to 21, which again on paper sounds good, more points for more skills. However, both of these changes had other effects. Now that each class had their own skill tree on each commander, individual high point commanders became much more valuable, especially if they are unique commanders such as Lucians or Kutuzov with their own unique talents and abilities. And those last two skill points to get from 19 points to 21 points cost around 1.7 million Commander XP to acquire. So that means that premium ships became much more valuable, as it costs nothing to move commanders around on premium ships, and of course the increased XP gain you get from playing premium ships. Now if you also had a large amount of premium ships with a commander like Lucian's with 21 points on him, you were in a very good place, because you don't have to pay to move him around from ship to ship. And with a commander like Lucian, with his skills and abilities, he's good on everything from DDs through carriers. So he's a great commander to have, and it's like they're kind of encouraging you to go grind out the resources you need for him, so therefore you play more time in the game. So if you have him or any other special commander and a lot of premium ships, you'd be in a pretty good spot. But for players with mostly tech line ships, the only choice was that you had to grind an additional 1.7 million Commander XP per commander for each of these ships, as these are tech line ships, and if you want to move your commander around, you have to pay 500 doubloons to do that, and many veteran players have very large fleets, as they've been playing the game for quite some time, and over the years, these veteran players have 19-point commanders on these ships, so now it's all of a sudden you have to grind out another 1.7 million XP on each commander if you want your ships to be as good as they were. Now, in addition to this, the changes to the skill cap wasn't as simple as, here's 2 more commander skill points, enjoy. With the way that skills were moved around in many cases, you now have to spend more skill points to get a similar, or in some cases actually a weaker build. So in summary, commander skills have become grindier for similar builds, and those with unique commanders with large fleets of premium ships don't have to worry about training up a whole fleet's worth of 21-point commanders, while those that don't have to spend more time grinding up commanders. Also, especially last year, we have seen a major increase in line splits. So just to name a few that we got just last year, or last year in a couple of months, we had the British heavy cruisers, Soviet heavy cruisers, German gunboats, and of course the American chonker BBs. More lines with specialized roles than the main lines, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Now, we have had a few of these for years beforehand, such as the American light cruiser and Soviet DD splits. These splits generally bring more variety to a nation's tech line while still maintaining the general flavor of the line, such as the German battle cruisers that maintain the secondaries from the main line, but don't have the armor scheme of the main line, so they can't tank as well as the main line. They're more of fast and one-on-one brawlers with their high number of secondaries and torpedoes, but relatively low health and poor armor for their tiers. Now, it is of course nice to see nations' tech lines get fleshed out and add more variety to the lines, In addition, these are of course tech line ships that are free to everyone to grind. But do keep in mind this increase in tech lines, in line splits and tech lines. We'll come back to this later at the end in the summary. Now, one of the major big increases last year in point of contention with the community were early access events. Wargaming seemed to have made early access events almost their primary focus now. We went from having, well, no early access events unless you were a CC or super tester. Then we went to having early access events just from the patch beforehand before a new line came out, and these were just in random crates you could either earn or buy. You might get a new French battleship. The French battleship early access event was just like this. You might get that Richelieu to try out before the full line comes out. But now we have these events that span 2 patches now. We even had a case of 2 early access events going on at the same time with the Soviet CVs and German battle cruisers. Now, of course, these events were heavily monetized up until the community simply had enough of that, on top of other aggressive monetization that Wargaming was putting on. And like we've all remember last year around August, the community just absolutely had enough with that, and among a whole host of other issues. Thankfully, it does seem that the aggressive monetization has been put to the side for now. The German battlecruiser event, as we saw, there's no more sequential bundles where you have to spend insane amount of doubloons to get early access to the new ships if you want to. And we'll see if this continues on. The Pan-Asian Cruiser early access event is set to start in 11.0, so we'll see how that goes. And again, thankfully, for now at least, it seems that these events have been demonetized significantly. So also last year, we got everyone's favorite new class, submarines. And I imagine CV players finally like this class a lot because CVs finally have a class that's more despised than theirs. Now, Wargaming seems hell-bent on adding in this class to the game. We went through several rounds of testing on separate servers and separate modes last year. Now, next week with 11.0, we will see submarines get removed from randoms for 2 patches in order for more balancing according to Wargaming. And I could probably spend an hour going over the changes that have happened to submarines during their testing phases, but TLDR, it's kind of like the CV rework. One patch, these submarines are ungodly OP with torpedoes that can 2-tap ships out of the water. Next patch, they're a mild annoyance for 98% of the time until they're really annoying in that one situation. And of course, the community reception to submarines has been mostly negative, but there is a decent chunk of players that do seem to be genuinely interested in this class. So keep that in mind as well. Now, of course, speaking of new classes or new ships in general, super ships. We had a new temporary game mode over the summer where we could play 2 new super ships in their own game mode. The Hanover and Satsuma, a German super battleship and a Japanese super battleship, respectively. The mode was generally well received and a source of good fun for many, and a good bit of grinding, myself included, took advantage of that mode for that. It was then announced later in the year that super ships would be added into randoms in 2022. Sometime in 2022, we don't know exactly when yet. In addition to announcing a handful of new super ships as well with that announcement. We got the Annapolis, which is the Demorthin of the turret, the Konda, which is a super Henri. We got the Khabarovsk 2, which is, like, seriously, I don't even know what the name of the Soviet Super DD is. It's literally just Khabarovsk with the alternative firing mode, along with super ships having a new economy, one where it will be almost impossible to make any significant profit, having almost double the maintenance cost of Tier 10 ships. And these super ships also have their own unique gimmicks. The Hanover, for example, once you get your firing orders cranked up all the way, you have 14-kilometer secondaries with an increased fire rate and increased accuracy. The Satsuma gets the increased accuracy after building up her firing orders. And like I just mentioned, the new super cruisers and super destroyers have their own alternative firing mode where you can basically get like a quick 3-round burst out of your turrets, and then you have a long cool time afterwards. And the Japanese super DD can swap in between torpedo types, so keep that in mind as well. So now let's go ahead and go over the announcements for this issue. Mind you, we're barely 3 weeks into 2022, and we have some seriously crazy content announced. So, of course, super carriers. As many of you know, last week 2 new super ships, this time super carriers, were announced. The British carrier Eagle, a modified Audacious, and an actual legitimate super carrier, the American carrier the United States, were announced along with jet aircraft capable of delivering fast, direct, but low damage attacks. We also had a new mode announced, Airship Escort, essentially a payload escort mode where both teams must escort their airship to the designated location on the map before the enemy team can get theirs there, or they can sink each other, sink the other team, and win. Now, this is the latest in a series of temporary game modes that have been announced over the past few years. I wouldn't say the new game modes that we have been getting over the past 2-3 years are a big significant change, although I would like to see them finally couple them into one rotating mode of the week. But I would hesitate to call these new game modes major changes. But new game modes are always nice. So after taking a look back at what has happened over the course of last year and what's been announced so far for this year, I've come to a few conclusions on where the game is probably headed. 3 to be exact. So first off, we are going to see more and more modern ships and more line splits. And this is good or bad depending upon your opinion. So it's clear that the devs are running out of real steel and even paper ships that fit into the early to mid 20th century era that the game focuses on. Primarily on artillery ships as well. So far, we don't have any ships that have genuine guided missiles or missiles at all, but hey, we're only on the 3rd week of 2022. Who knows what's up? So we have been getting more and more ships that push the boundary of that time frame, such as the upcoming American destroyer, the Forrest Sherman. They're also running out of nations to add in. Unlike tanks, where many more nations designed, developed, and produced their own tanks, the World Warships devs have relatively few nations left to pull actual, unique designs from. I say that because someone's probably already typing in the comments, what about Canada's Navy? I would love to see the Commonwealth tech tree become a thing, but the plain truth is the Commonwealth ships are mostly going to be the British ships because that's what they were made up of during World War II. Now, you do have a couple of destroyers and cruisers that are unique that you could add into a Commonwealth tech tree, but again, it would just be mostly, especially at higher tier, copy-paste Royal Navy ships, so yeah, but that's another video for another time. We will also probably be seeing more and more line splits in the future as well, which in my opinion isn't a bad thing. Like I said, they have a lot of nice pluses to their addition, more variety in a nation, and of course new ships, or new tech line ships, or of course new free ships for all of us to play. And I also see of course more ships that are going to push the time frame of the game, and of course submarines will probably be released in full this year for the same reason, as they're running out of surface ships, and submarines are an untapped resource for the devs at this point. Now, next up, the grind is going to increase. The devs have already began to increase the grind with just the commander rework. That's not even talking about the removal of signal flags from in-game achievements and moving them to the armory for credits, or the announced removal of several economy signal flags and cambos, or the increase in their cost to purchase. Now, that being said, even with these changes, at least the announced changes being implemented in World of Warships, the grind in World of Warships isn't really that bad compared to something like War Thunder or several other free-to-play games. However, the average free-to-play Joe will notice a difference throughout 2022. And of course, Wargaming wants this because the more time you spend playing the game, the more likely it is that you will spend money on premium ships and premium time. That is, of course, what they want you to do. You could also argue that it is, of course, a company. They need to make money. And again, if you look at the grind of the game right now, it really isn't that bad. So you could take that either way. But I do predict a much more grindy future for the game. And lastly, expect more crazy super ships and gimmicks. Super ships are more than likely not going anywhere. They serve 2 purposes for wargaming. The first being that economic drain. Wargaming has already announced that the super ships will have essentially a negative economy, which will help, of course, fight inflation and increase playtime for the average player, as if they want to play a super ship, they will have to grind out the credits needed to fund their play. Secondly, super ships are very interesting and desirable to play. Who doesn't want to play a massive battleship bristling with secondaries and 19-inch guns in the Hanover, or who doesn't want to play a cruiser that fires like a machine gun with something like the Conda? Wargaming likely thinks that they can pull in more new players by adding these in. Now, Warships player numbers haven't been decreasing, but they sure as hell haven't been increasing either. This could be also another reason, of course, for the introduction of submarines into the game, because it might appeal to a new audience. This whole new class in the game, in addition to the crazy super ships like the United States with its jet fighters, and again the Conda, the Annapolis, the Caballeros 2 with their alternative firing mode as well. So that's what I say we should be expecting in the future, at least in 2022, for this game, and what we will probably be seeing over the next couple of years, a shift to more time limit pushing ships, more ships from the 60s and 70s, and it would not surprise me that potentially by maybe the end of this year or early 2023 we start to see maybe unguided missile ships or guided missile ships get added into the game. Now, where are they going to put all this at? I don't know. Probably in super ships if I had to guess. It wouldn't surprise me that we see guided missile cruisers with missiles being their alternative firing mode, where you fire off a salvo of missiles, either guided or unguided. How would they do that? I don't know. But I think that's where that super ship classification is going to fill in, that gap right there. But anyway, guys, that's my 2 cents on this topic. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 35,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope you're having a wonderful Monday, and if you're in this crazy winter weather that we're having right now, stay safe and stay warm. I hope to catch you guys in the next one.